Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. So it's been over a year since I last did one of these Q&A videos, and I always like doing these, just having discussions about kind of a wide range of photography topics. So I decided recently to put out a call for questions on my Instagram, had a lot of really great submissions, and today we're going to cover a bunch of those, including things like film's future with the rise of AI, people leaning more towards physical media, underrated film cameras, Fuji Frontier scanner reliability and performance, finding photo subjects, especially if you're bored of your local surroundings, dealing with creative and inspiration block, finding an audience for your work, and a whole bunch more. All right, so we're going to kick things off with some film photography related questions. The first one here I found to be really interesting, and it's something I've actually been thinking about a lot lately. So this is, with the rise of physical media, can you see more people getting into film photography? And the short answer to this is yes. The long answer, I've actually been chatting with people about this recently. Film's popularity has been rising over the past 10 years. It's kind of come back from almost not being a thing anymore. And we've only seen growth with it, which is pretty amazing. But from my own kind of standpoint, I've noticed over the last year that just with a lot of things nowadays, this like endless convenience and endless options, and everything is automated, and everything is available at your fingertips, and the technology and the tools we have just do it all for you. I'm almost getting tired of it, something like Spotify with every artist or song you could ever want, or Netflix with every movie and TV show you could ever want at your fingertips. Like, I miss getting that cassette and putting it in and listening to the full album, or I miss like renting a DVD. I was talking with my wife about this the other day, going to the video store and getting a DVD, and it's like, that's what you're watching because that is what you paid for. I feel like we respected the experience of a lot of things, or we were so much more drawn into it in the past. Whereas nowadays, you can easily be pulled out of it because there's something else waiting for you if you aren't totally enjoying the thing. So with film photography, I think, from like a hobbyist and enthusiast standpoint, there's a huge draw because it is this very unique process that needs this human kind of involvement with it on a very like physical level, and that will pull you into it, and it'll be an experience that isn't the same as with digital. From a professional and commercial standpoint, I think you're just going to go and get the tools you need that'll get the job done the best. But I think there is this unique appeal with film photography that is only going to become more popular. I think we're going to keep seeing it grow. Okay, so next up is, do you think we'll see anything new from Kodak Rochester now that they're selling film directly? So if you aren't aware, Kodak recently released new films, so Ectacolor and Ectapan, and these aren't new films, they're just new names, and there's a lot of confusion behind this, because basically there's two Kodaks. There's the Kodak in Rochester, which is the factory, the Kodak that's actually making the film, and then there's Kodak Alaris, who's been selling the film under the Portra and T-Max names for quite a while now. But they're two separate companies, and what happened recently is the Kodak Rochester decided that they want to start selling these films they're making, the Portras and the T-Maxes, but they don't own the rights to those names, so they had to essentially create these new names to sell the film directly themselves instead of going through or supplying it to Alaris first. So they came out with Ectacolor and Ectapan, which are Portra and T-Max, the exact same film. I mean, there's a lot of, I think, positivity around that. Obviously, from a film standpoint, it's just the same thing. So it's not new film, but the fact that they went and did that, there was obviously effort and time, and I'm assuming money involved in making that move. And they obviously saw the potential in it, or there was reasoning behind it. There's enough kind of interest and enough popularity and potential growth with film. So I see that as a huge positive, and I would imagine that we're only going to see new developments from them in the future. We've seen it from individuals, smaller companies, even larger companies like Ilford. They just released Pan-F and sheet film. So I think we're well past kind of the fad standpoint, and it seems like all of these companies see the potential to keep growing their products. So fingers crossed. I would love a new Kodak color film. Okay, so next up I have two that are kind of similar. So this is, how do you think the UK has affected your choice in film stock? And then what is it about the UK that you think lends itself to black and white photography? And I group these together because moving here to the UK has significantly impacted, my film choices. Now I shoot primarily black and white, I would say. And I think for me, with the type of work that I do, I struggled with color almost right off the bat. When I moved over here, obviously I'd been working with color film for like 5-6 years, and I just kind of applied that process to the work I started to make over here. And I was never really that happy with kind of how that looked. And it's funny because there's a lot of British photographers making work in color that I love. But I think for me, I'm primarily doing landscape work. The landscape here is dominated heavily by green. In the winter, it's kind of like gray brown. It's not the most appealing. And I always just had a hard time with that. And when I started working with black and white for the first time here, like instantly it clicked where I was like, okay, this is what it's about. Now it's focusing on like the light and the weather and the mood. Those are the things, that are going to really influence the scene. So for me, it's really been just the environment here, that the color palette, the landscapes that I'm photographing. That's a big one. I think if you're doing like street photography and you're in different areas, maybe it's a different story when it comes to color. But yeah, with the work I do, I've been very happy with black and white compared to color. All right, and then the last one in this film category is, do you think it's crucial to stick with one film stock for a project? So this is just going to come down to personal preference. As like I don't think there's a general rule that says you have to. I think sometimes, simplifying is important. Sometimes variety is important. For me, though, my preference is yes, to try and stick to one. And it's funny because with my work that I did in the American West and my book, An American Mile, that was like 4 different films I shot on, just because as I was making that work for the first couple of years, I didn't know it was going to become what it was. If I could go back and redo it, not that I'm not happy with how it all turned out, but I would just pick, say, one. Here for Slate City, the black and white work I'm doing up in North Wales, I have been trying to just work with HP5, sometimes with FP4, but they're close enough in terms of look that it the look of all of the final images is the same. So I think for me, it's important. Yes, I like that kind of consistency, but I think it's just going to come down to personal preference. I mean, you could use 20 different, and that could be some type of creative approach for a project. It's really, the options are endless. We'll get back to the video in a second. Just have to take a quick break here to talk about the sponsor today, which is Squarespace. So I've been using Squarespace for the past 5 years now for my own photography website, and what I love is how easy it is to build, maintain, and upgrade a professional looking site. As an example, if you're looking to build one of your own, you can get started with one of their pre-made templates or even use something like their blueprint builder. And from there, they have an endless list of tools that help you grow your site with your business. Things like a wide variety of gallery styles to choose from, where you can simply click and drag to reorder and rearrange images. You can also add something like an online shop if you want to sell prints, books, and other things like that. Or even add a blog where you can start writing as a different way to connect with your audience. So check out squarespace.com today, sign up for a free 14-day trial, and when you're ready to launch, you can use my link below to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. All right, so as mentioned, going to touch on some inspiration, burnout questions. I had so many of these about going through kind of creative blocks and finding inspiration and finding subjects, but I've grouped these into kind of 3. So the first one is how to get inspired when film is too expensive now and digital doesn't feel engaging. So from a process standpoint, I understand where you're coming from. A huge thing about working with film for me is I love the process and the tool, and I get a lot of enjoyment from that. And when I work with digital, I don't feel the same way. But what I would say is when I am working on a project or something I'm really excited about, or making images that really excite me, when I'm in that zone, the tools kind of fall to the wayside. It's very different than, say, if I just went out with one of my cameras as like for a walk to make images for enjoyment. When I'm working on the stuff that excites me, the tools kind of fall to the side. So it sounds like the solution to your problem is, find either a project or find photographs to make that truly excite you. Because I think when that happens, it doesn't really matter what tool you're using, because you become immersed in the actual image making process. And what brings the excitement or the fulfillment is the photograph that you're making. So that would be my advice. I hope that that makes sense. But that's how I see it. Find something that really excites you. All right, next up, all has to do with finding photo subjects and ideas in your local area. I had a lot of these. So as an example, how to find a theme for a photo project. If you've been living in the same city your entire life, how do you find subjects to photograph in your local area? I feel like I have to travel in order to feel inspired. And I absolutely understand where people are coming from with this. You live somewhere long enough, it becomes normal. Maybe it's not the most exciting area. But what I would say is there's endless potential to make projects that come from a creative idea in your head and aren't necessarily documenting something that is in front of you already. And a day before I was going to shoot this video, I actually had a photographer reach out to me who shared a project, and this is the best example I can think of for this. So this is a photographer named Tico, and he actually emailed me recently letting me know that he was inspired to make this after watching one of my project videos on the channel a couple of years ago. But this is just such a unique and fun and I think incredible idea and a great example of this. So this project is called Poorly Hidden Behind Things, and it's essentially this collection of images, which are all landscape images, but self-portraits as well, where the photographer is in the frame somewhere, poorly hidden behind things. And he has basically a pneumatic cable release, and a lot, like some of the photos are so obvious where he is, like hidden behind a traffic cone or a lamp post. But some of them are actually hard to spot them at first. You follow kind of the pneumatic cable release going into the picture. But the images are executed, I think, so great. The compositions are awesome. It's so creative. It's so fun. I think it's just a great idea of something that, was created out of the photographer's mind, and it wasn't dependent on, having some dramatic or super interesting thing in his local surroundings. So such a fun project. And honestly, just beyond all of this is a great reminder to me about how photography is supposed to be fun as well. All right, and then the last few for this, I had some questions about burnout. So as an example, as an artist, what do you do when you face an inspiration block, or what's your best advice to someone if they're burnt out with photography? Almost once a year, it's almost guaranteed that I will go through an extended period of time where I'm just don't want anything to do with photography. It just actually happened last month to me. I didn't post any videos up here for a month. I'll go through these periods where I just have no interest or excitement or energy for photography, and then I kind of go overboard and start questioning if I like it anymore and all this stuff. And always I come back, I get my energy back and I'm more excited than ever. But, of course we're all different. So, what works for me might not work for you. But these themes that I see pop up over the years throughout these periods is almost always what helps me get through this, because I'm super stubborn and I just try and keep making work to push through. But it's just disconnection, like total disconnection, and just allowing myself to not do anything with photography for a few weeks. And obviously this is, couldn't be difficult depending on if it's your job or if it's just a hobby. But that's what's worked for me. And I think nowadays there's this feeling of always needing to be making something. We're encouraged to constantly be making something. And I think that's pulled us away from just this natural rhythm of making something and then taking breaks and recharging. So I think what, is always on my mind now is like, disconnect from photography. Don't look at stuff. Don't read stuff. Don't worry about your own work. Just like take a week, take 2 weeks, take 3 weeks, whatever it needs to be, and just go do something else. And almost always when I finally kind of commit to that, that's when I end up finding my inspiration again. So I think getting away from this always on, constant social media creation, posting, consistency, algorithm, all this stuff, disconnect, take a break. And that's usually what'll help recharge you. Okay, so next up are some gear questions. And the first one here is, what is the most underrated camera in your opinion? So I don't have a specific model and make for this, just because I haven't used all of the cameras, nor would I want to. It would be exhausting. But I have a group that I would nominate for this, and that is the 35mm SLRs from the 90s, the plastic electronic automated things. And it's not that I think they're undervalued, I just think they're often overlooked because, when people get into film, I think they're naturally drawn to cameras from the 50s, 60s, 70s, these things that are so far off of maybe the digital camera they were using something like a TLR or like a Canon, or even if you have a bunch of money, a Leica. There's, this build to them and this precision. It's just such a different experience. And for a lot of people, that is the draw and the fun of working with film. But purely from an image making standpoint, you go to the 90s and there's just this endless selection of tools from, say, like Minolta, Canon, Pentax, you name it, that have a ton of features and are possibly more reliable because they're newer. There are electronics involved, but just are very, very good tools for getting the job done. I have this Canon EOS 33. I think I paid like £60 for it. Has an incredible metering system, has eye autofocus, automation with film advance and rewind. And it's just like, it works so well and it gets the job done. It's not, again, the most exciting camera to use, but if you just need a tool that you want to get out and start making images, any camera from that era, I think there's just kind of endless options to choose from. So that would be my pick for underrated, underrated cameras. Then just actually one other camera question here. This is in relation to large format. So someone asked, clamshell 4x5 camera or no, and why? So if you're not familiar with large format, when we're talking about field cameras, which are like the collapsible cameras that you would take out on location, there's kind of two styles. So there's wooden cameras, and then there's what are called clamshell style, which is basically a box where the front opens up. So it has a front bed that drops down. The wooden ones, you often have to raise up the back standard and then raise up the front standard. And there's a little more construction to them. Sometimes you actually have to take the front standard and thread it in, and a little more setup involved to zero everything out. The clamshell ones, you just drop down that front bed and pull out the front standard. So I'm a big fan of the clamshell style just because for me, they feel really rigid and they're so quick to set up. There's no rear standard to raise up. And the one I have, at least the Horseman, as soon as that clicks in place, you pull out the front standard, you're zeroed, you're ready to go, and it's super solid. So that's my preference. They're maybe not as kind of nice looking as the wooden field cameras, but something like a Toyo, a Wista, or even a Horseman, clamshell style, I'm a big fan. All right, so next up is, how easy is it to keep those Fuji film scanners running? Are they friendly to repair and maintain? So first off, these are, like I said, from early 2000s, so they're quite old. They were designed to be used in commercial settings where they're running daily and almost never being turned off. So it's not that they're fragile, but they are old. And the one thing that you realize as soon as you own one and you start kind of learning the ins and outs of it, I recently had to tear mine apart to move it here to this new studio. You realize how much different tech was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. There's so many parts, everything's so big, there's so many cables and wires. I'm not a super technical person, but there's just so many more pieces and things that could fail. And knock on wood, so far I've been really lucky with mine. I've had 2 situations where I had to get it repaired. Luckily, it was just the secondary computer system, the server computer, which is just an old Dell PC that the hard drive had issues. So I bought my scanner off a Frontier Tech, so I just sent it to him. He wiped the drives, reinstalled everything. I was good to go. But I am part of this Fuji Frontier Facebook group, and you see posts every now and then where people just have these freak issues that come out of nowhere, where it's like focus detection off, or just these complex kind of rare problems. And the difficult part is, the support for these and the documentation and the knowledge isn't what it would have been 25 years ago. So it can be really hard to solve these problems sometimes, or find the specialized tools you might need. So I think there's some luck to it, and there's a risk involved with having these. So if you have one, I think it's like finding a tech or having some sort of relationship with someone who knows the ins and outs that you can turn to if it goes wrong. So other than that, mine's worked great. And I think when, they should work fine most of the time, but they are getting older and there's just problems that can arise. Okay, and there is one more scanning question here, and that is, what is your scanning workflow for your 4x5 negative? So at the start of the year, I actually went out and bought an Imicon FlexTite Precision 2 scanner, which is, I think, from the early 2000s, same vintage as the Frontier, and that was going to be what I started to use for my 4x5 film. But turns out the one I bought had a fried board. I took it down to Stu Cully, who's kind of the go-to Flextite tech here in the UK, and he said the board's shot and there's basically nothing you can do. It's a paperweight now. So I was able to get my money back, and that kind of scared me off of them a little bit, because that one was still sort of affordable, but other than that, if you want to use a 4x5 Flextite scanner, you're paying like 3, 4, 5,000 pounds. And it scared me off a little bit. So I'm still using Lumix S5 2X in the high res mode with a Sigma macro art lens, and then this dedicated 4x5 light and holder by a company called Q New Design. The build on it's incredible, and it works really well. I did a video about this on the channel about 6 months ago. I'll link to it, but yeah, that's my setup. I'm really happy with it. I'm getting like 10,000 pixel on the long edge images for 4x5 film, and the detail and the sharpness is great. So until I decide to maybe buy a Flextite again, that's my go-to. Okay, and then just a couple printing questions here to wrap up the gear section. So the first is, would you recommend RA4 printing or a regular printer for a hobbyist? So my answer to this would be both. I think printing's really important, and there's a lot of value that you can get from it. It's kind of like the final step of the image making process. And Inkjet's a really good decision for at home. I did a video last year where I bought this used Inkjet printer. It's sitting beside me still. I use it all the time. It's a Canon Pro 10S, and I think I got it for like 150 pounds or something. And that allows you to just go and start printing right away. And Inkjet prints are, incredible once you nail your workflow, and there's all sorts of different paper options. But I also think it's important, or there's value in at least just trying the RA4 printing process. If you don't watch a channel, I set up a darkroom here in the studio with my studio partner, and we've been RA4 printing this year, and it's been a huge learning experience. It's such a unique process, and I absolutely love it. And I think everyone should at least try it. Find a community darkroom, find a place in your area, and just go and make a few color prints. It's so much fun, and it just makes you appreciate the entire process. Doing it without any type of digital workflow involved. Developing your film and then printing it is a pretty unique experience. So yeah, both. Okay, and then last category here, I just have some like a miscellaneous group, some stuff that didn't fit into other categories. So first up was, what are some strategies to develop a unique personal style? And I would say the best strategy is not having a strategy. I think personal style, however you want to define that, certain maybe defining characteristics of your work, subtle or more extreme, just happen naturally over a very long period of time. And I think trying to figure out how to create a personal style will actually pull you in the other direction. I think what's most important is just committing fully to the work that excites you, the subject matter that excites you, the style, doing it in the way that looks best to you, and not letting too many outside opinions and influences pull you away from that. Because it's easy to make assumptions, I think, nowadays about our work and what it is or what it isn't, just based on false metrics and maybe unsolicited feedback. But I think just staying true to yourself and committing long term to making the thing that excites you, like if it looks good on the screen and if the idea excites you, stick with that, commit, and over time I think that develops into something unique. And it's important. I think that's what we need nowadays. Okay, next up is, how do you find time and focus to create art for yourself as opposed to chasing the algorithm? And what I would say to this is, anything that I make, if that's photos or if that's video, I could honestly say that anything I've ever put out there is something I felt good about and that has interested me and has come from a place of me wanting to do it first and foremost because it's something I like and enjoy and I'm interested in. And it's never about what will be the best for the algorithm. So I think the time is always there if you take that approach. And, that's not to say that I'm not, I don't try to be thoughtful about what I'm making, because obviously, I have a YouTube channel, which is a big part of my income. I need to make things that I think people are going to like and enjoy. But I think there's a way to do that where it's something that still interests you and you feel good about. And then you just send it out there and see what happens. And sometimes things do good and sometimes things don't do good. And I think the algorithm is such this abstract thing, and we never know how it actually works, and we make assumptions about how it works, and then it changes and we get frustrated. So I think, again, just this like commitment and patience standpoint of like, make something that first and foremost you enjoy, that you think is going to be enjoyable or entertaining or useful or helpful for other people, and then put it out there, be thoughtful and try to be strategic about it, but to focus on what you think will work for the algorithm. First off, you'll probably never truly know. Second off, you'll probably just end up hating the process because you're making a bunch of stuff that you might not actually feel that great about. So I think always starting from a place of making it for yourself first, something that you enjoy and like and feel good about is the most important part. Okay, and then the last one to end this out, I wanted to touch on this one just because this is something that has been relevant for me recently. So this is, what hobbies and activities do you engage with that are outside of the creative pursuit? And what's interesting is, for a very long time, I would look at, I'd see people online and they're doing this and they're doing that, and they're going out on their bike or cycling, or they're, climbing, or they're doing all these other things. And I'm like, I got photography. That's what I do. That is my thing. As I've gotten older, it's become the thing 100% outside of obviously family and friends. And it's something that I have realized I need to change, just so I'm not on all the time. I'm so fortunate and grateful that I'm able to do this for a living. But then I go home, and at night I'm like looking on my phone, and I'm looking at cameras or reading photo books, and there's no disconnect. So I've started to try and do things more recently that have just interested me, even like to pick one thing to have that's different from photography. Recently, that's looked like starting to do some long distance hiking here in the UK. So I've just started breaking this one hike into sections, where I'm doing like, a 30-kilometer walk one day, and then I'll do another part the next day. And it's been the first time in so long where I go out, I don't have a camera, I'm not making a video, I'm not worried about making the activity anything, and it's a total disconnect. And honestly, it's been so refreshing and so recharging. So for me, it's something I'm trying to get better at, and I think it's something that has a ton of value, other than just becoming all consumed 100% of the time by something like photography, which eventually leads to these intense periods of burnout, at least from my experience. So anyways, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions. If I didn't get to yours this time, I try to pick as many as I can and group them together. Obviously, I don't want to make like a 4-hour Q&A video, but thank you again. Try and do another one of these, maybe another 6 months. Like I said, I always really enjoy it, but that's it for this. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.